Hey there, my little shadows, it's me again, your master, the Shadow Reader, here today to provide you all with a little bit of a different kind of video. And this different kind of video is an announcement, more or less, that I think has been needed to be said for some time now. Now, as many of you should know, I have been doing Creepypasta stories for nearly 5 years now. I am not kidding at all. I've been doing this since 2017. Think about that. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. I mean, I know that 2021 technically isn't over yet, but still, I'm gonna go out of my way and say that I've been doing this for almost 5 years now. I've been narrating creepypastas and providing reviews for those for about that amount of time. And to be 100% honest, with doing these kind of stories for as long as I have, it really takes a little bit of a toll on you, so to speak. I've read so many pastas on so many different sites, so many different stories that people have made, and even ones that I've written myself, that I'm going to be 100% honest with every last one of you. I don't really enjoy doing them as much anymore. Now, before any of you start freaking out thinking I'm quitting doing creepypastas or anything, that's not the case, but there is something I will say that I do think needs to be stated. First and foremost, this is kind of a bit of a channel rebranding, and I know that some people don't like the idea of a channel rebranding into something. I mean, I know Andal's done this, I've known a couple people who have gone out of their way and rebranded, and it's never really worked out too well, but I do have my reasons for why I kind of want to go out of my way and rebrand my channel to something a little bit different than being a creepypasta narration channel, and I have a few reasons for this. Number one, continuously reading creepypastas and the like that I know are not going to be amazing, or I know for a full-on fact aren't really going to be up to standards, because let me just say this right now, if you've narrated as many stories as I have, your standards for your typical creepypasta are going to be so exceedingly high that you're basically going to wind up becoming a bit of a Scrooge when it comes to doing reviews for these stories. And I've noticed that that's been the case for a lot of the pastas that I've narrated recently in my reviews, is that I've been a lot more harder on these kinds of stories than anything. Not like ranting and raving like I used to do, but more along the lines of going out of my way and just kind of acting more, I guess you could probably say I've kind of gotten to a point where I just consistently see the flaws in a story, even though there's usually a lot of effort put into that, into a specific story. And again, like I said, you know, I've read these stories for such a long time. I know all the cliches, I know all the things and stories that you should try and avoid and things like that. I've done this for such a long time that I know everything practically by heart. Not only that, but also the unfortunate realization that most of the stories nowadays just pretty much are almost exactly the same. I mean, even I can say with many of the stories I've personally have written, even though I definitely went out of my way and I tried to come up with something so much more original than a lot of other Lost Episode pastas or cartoon creepypastas, it's just really, 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 really difficult to really make something that's genuinely original and scary, because many of you who've read my stories should probably know that I don't usually rely too much on the scare factor in Lost Episode pastas with the stories I've written. Maybe with a couple of exceptions, but I'm just going to be 100% honest with all of you. The primary reason why I wrote a lot of those stories wasn't so much to be scary, but instead be a lot more realistic, because that was something that many creepypastas that I've narrated or have read throughout the years just fails to really hold up to. I wanted to make sure that pastas were realistic, so that way there was a sense of believability. But unfortunately, one of the primary flaws that I had with many of those stories is that very few of them, if any of them, were scary. Now, obviously, there were some pastas like Paw Patrol: The Final Mission and many other stories like Playtime is Over and others that I have made that genuinely were scary, at least to a lot of people's, viewpoints, which is great. But even then, many of the Lost Episode pastas I've written just aren't scary. They don't provide a whole lot in terms of, a scare factor. And when it comes to doing any creepypasta, you want to make sure of it that it's realistic and believable, and also scary at the same time. You usually have to have both of those, or at the very least make it extremely weird, but that's just not something that I really have been able to accomplish. Now, maybe I could be wrong. If you want to point out a story that you think that I have done that does manage to do that, that's great. Maybe there's a couple of ones that I'm completely forgetting, but still. So with that stated, rebranding this channel. I want to make something very exceedingly clear. I'm not giving up doing creepypasta narrations. This is pretty much the thing that I know for a fact I'm very well known for. I mean, if it wasn't for the creepypasta stories that I've narrated throughout my entirety of my time on YouTube, or the entirety of the time that I've had my channels, I wouldn't be as well known as I am. And I do know that this is it's my primary base. So if I were to completely just throw that all out and everything, I wouldn't really be the shadow reader, to be quite honest. And I could definitely see a lot of problems coming by if I were to completely ditch it. And I'm not going to do that, because I know that even though many of the stories I've narrated are garbage, there are some out there that you guys have written or other people have written out there that actually are genuinely good and that do deserve a spotlight and a review to go with it. And there are a couple of stories many stories right now that I need to get back into, and I'm not going to sit there and stop until I get every last one of them narrated. A couple of these pastas in general are Barnstorm and A Light in the Sky, both of them written by Joda Octavius, and for any of you wondering why I haven't made any updates to those, I've been specifically requested by Joda to not narrate them just yet, because he's going out of his way and taking the time to really reamp them. It kind of fix up a couple of things, really try and rehash it a good bit, which I'm fine with, and I have no intentions of narrating those until I get the okay that they're ready to go, and, they're ready to go and I can narrate them. So there's that. Those are the two stories that I know for a fact that I do have intentions of getting to, but I'm not going to do just yet. The other few stories that I know of are The Loud House, The Virus, or in this case, The Lost, which is actually the original name of the story. I just changed it to The Virus because, in all honesty, I think that title is much better and a lot more believable and realistic for the concept that the story itself has. I know I've stated that I really hated the ending of that story, which you can go check out if you want to, but I'm not going to spoil anything. But I do also know that I should, because I really shouldn't leave it hanging the way that it is. I think I've gotten all the way to part 2, I think. I still have yet to read part 3 and all the other parts, and I do want to get back to that. So I wanted to make sure of it that I do those as well. That's another story that, obviously I'm not going to give up on. Another one is Paw Patrol: The Monkey's Paw. A story that I had actually completely finished at one point, but unfortunately didn't save all the videos, so I'm going to have to remake a lot of them. And I think the very most I've gotten up to so far, I think it's part 2, maybe part 3. I think it's probably about part 3, I guess. So I definitely know I have to get to the rest of those stories, the rest of those chapters, get those narrated and get those done. So, there's that story as well. So there's primarily 4 creepypasta stories that I know for a fact I do need to get back into. Now, some of you might be asking about The Loud House Darkness and a few other pastas. I might get to those, but I'm not going to go out of my way and do that just yet. Mostly because I'm not sure if I want to or not. Maybe I might, but still. Now, getting back to what I was getting myself into. What am I going to be rebranding to? Well, to put it bluntly, I've been wanting to do a variety of different kinds of content for a while now, because I usually have a crap ton of ideas flowing through my mind. Some of these being a couple of, cartoon movie reviews, things like that. I'm not talking about the typical cartoony movie reviews, but reviewing certain obscure or very popular media-based things or whatever that people either haven't touched on, or something that could be a bit of a different viewpoint, kind of like an unpopular opinion, I guess you could say. So that's one thing. Number 2, I am considering doing podcast, but I'm not 100% on that one, so that one's kind of a work in progress. But again, I do want to get to those, but I'm not 100% sure. And the third one, and I think this one's actually the most important one and one that I really want to work on, is animatics and animation. These are two things that I really want to dedicate a hell of a lot of time on doing. Primarily because I want to actually get started making my own little series of sort. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but the concept in question that I will say that it's going to be is a little series of mine that I want to work on called Scrapyard City. Now, for those of you who want a little bit of a taste of what Scrapyard City is, it's about 5 people within an anthropomorphic ferret-based town or place or city specifically that are classified as outcast by the society that they live in, and they have to kind of work with things, try and overcome these problems, and more or less just hang out and have adventures with one another. Again, it's a very basic concept, and I still need to work on it, but that's primarily one of the reasons why I want to rebrand as much as I want to, because I genuinely want to make that into something. I want to make that into an actual series of mine, because it's been in my head for such a long time now, but the main problem I don't really have is time. And with having to do creepypasta narrations on almost a consistent basis and consistently getting requests for those, it just kind of takes away from the little time that I do have. Which, if I do step away from creepypastas for a good bit or limit the amount of them that I do, I know for a full-on fact I'll have a lot more time to actually work on that concept, work on that series, work on animatics, work on my animation skills, which again, like I said, I really want to work on and become better at. Because I want to expand a lot more on what I want to sit there and do. And not just that, but it actually makes me feel good about doing what I do. And I'm not going to lie to any of you. There have been times where I have skipped doing any kind of videos because the motivation just isn't there anymore, or it's very rarely there. And again, that might be because of the amount of time I've sat there and I've done these kinds of stories. It's just really difficult to just keep up with it and find any kind of enjoyment, because it's just so exceedingly repetitive and very rarely even interesting anymore that, you kind of start hating what you do. And I don't hate narrating pastas or reviewing pastas. I think it's very helpful for people in order to become better at what they do, but the amount of time that I constantly do these things is just a little too much. And there's another little issue I will say with rebranding, and that primarily is whether or not if it's actually going to be as successful or popular or whatever it may seem to be, on this channel, because I do know that pastas themselves usually do, for the most part, actually do pretty pretty okay for the most part. Most of them get like maybe a couple thousand views at most. But I think that with rebranding would probably do me a bit of a favor. Maybe it might have my channel start getting recommended a little bit more, perhaps, if I don't just sit there and do lost episode pastas or cartoon creepypastas or things like that. But I also do know that it does come with a bit of a risk, because there could be a potential probability that the rebrand that I sit there and I do might not be successful, and it could actually hurt my channel a lot more in the long run, but I'm willing to make that risk. To be fair, anyway, I don't do this channel for anything other than just a simple hobby, and that's all it's ever going to be. It's just going to be a hobby for me. That's it. It's not going to be a full-time thing. It's not going to be any of that. It's just something that I want to do in my spare time because I find it enjoyable and you guys do find it enjoyable. But there is actually one thing I do know for a fact that will actually be pretty successful, and that is the animatics, or the animation that I'll consistently do. I've noticed that with me doing animations and animatics and the like, those actually get a lot more views compared to the pasta narrations that I've done in the past. And I think that's probably because many of you guys really enjoy, me doing them. So again, I want to primarily focus on those things rather than creepypastas for a time, and really be able to build everything up, because again, it's something that makes me happy. It's something that I know for a fact will make me a lot more eager to get on my computer and work a little bit more rather than sit there and just kind of sit down and be lazy after a long day of work. So, yeah. I do apologize again if this is kind of a bit of a long video, but I think it's necessary. I do have intentions, once I get my brand new drawing tablet tomorrow, to start working on my avatar a little bit more, actually start making like little animatics or something. Hell, I might even sit there and bring Patrick Star back for a little bit of a animated Patrick Star and Shadow and Patrick show, which would probably be a lot better compared to the Patrick Star show that they have now. But again, that right there is something that I'll have to really look into, but I do want to bring that back just for the sake of nostalgia. So there's that. I just clinked my glass with my ring, so I guess it's about time to end the video. Thanks again for watching, everyone. I want to hear your own personal thoughts on what you think I should do. Well, actually, like what you personally think of the ideas that I do have. And the one thing I want to make sure of it that I have your support and you're okay to do this, because ultimately it's you guys who've made my channel, you know, as popular as it is now. So I do want to hear your feedback and what you personally think, and any kind of advice or any kind of concept or whatever that you think might be great. Do you guys want to sit there and see a bit of a weird Shadow Patrick show, or like an animatic of the series that I want to start working on, Scrapyard City? You know, and by the way, I will make it clear that if I do work on that, you guys will be getting updates to like the animatic or the storyboards, things like that, you know, as I work on that. So there is that. Also, if when I do actually start doing this, there might be a period of time where I might not upload any videos for a time. That's because I really want to make sure that the thing is perfect, and I want to work on it as, you know, with as much time and effort as I can, so that way it looks good and that everything works out great. So yeah, what are everyone's thoughts on this? I really would love to hear your feedback. Thanks again for watching today's video, you guys. I will be having one more Creepypasta narration done today. It's a Space Voyager one. Strictly speaking, Patrick's Pranksgiving. I just felt I needed to make this video first and foremost before I did anything else, because to be fair, if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to make this, because I probably would forget everything that I had to say. So yeah, enough beating around the bush. Thanks again for watching today's video, everyone. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and I'd love to have your support. Thanks again for watching today's video, everyone. I'll be seeing you on the next one. Like always, roll the outro, because I'm out.
In fear and surprise, as your eyes widen, your mouth goes dry with each battered breath. You try to scream, your mind begs to leave, glued to your computer screen. The killers they slash, the tapes burn and crash. The cartridge you bought will be your final haunt. The rituals of hate will seal your fate. The tears you shed will be from the fear-gripping portrait, nightmarish gore-filled, terrorizing, hateful, burning, violent, rage-inducing, knife-slashing, blood-splattering, silent screams. Only time will tell if you will escape this online hell. Your horror-filled obsessions will come with its own regressions. Your pathetic screams will not be heeded in any way, because your nightmares will come at any day.